Okay, let's talk about an advanced calibration issue. Say you've calibrated your machine and you cut a rectangle or a square and everything looks good when it's 3 inches or 5 inches or 10 inches. But if it gets to be a big, long opening, like 32 inches wide, it's off. What do we do about that? Well, we need to talk about a setting called the xypitch. Up here I've got a belt. This is the way we ship the belt, all rolled up in a spiral like this. But you can see that the belt has teeth in it, on it. So those teeth are spaced every 5 millimeters. So that's the pitch of the belt. All right. If you were to loosen these two screws with your Allen wrench and then take your fingernail and stick it under this strip seal, see if I can get it, okay, and peel it back like this. Be careful with it because you can bend it and kink it. You'll see the belt underneath here. You can see I've got my finger in there and I'm moving the belt around and you can see the teeth on the belt. Okay, so this belt has a bunch of steel cables in the end of it. I don't know if this will focus on it, but let's see. So those steel cables will relax over time and can stretch if they're over tensioned. So we have to have a way to tell the machine to move the right amount of turns on the motor to move an exact distance. So the way we do that is we change a setting called the xypitch. I'm just going to put this back, make sure it's in the center, and then snug these two screws down. They don't have to be overly tight, just hand tight. Okay, so if we go into the cut software and we go to setup and we go to machine settings, most of the time you're in settings. Go to the machine settings. It's going to ask for a password. Put in a password. Okay, and then we're going to come to our settings pages. On the axis tab, here's the xypitch that I talked about. By default, it's set at 35. It can range between 35 and 35.06. And how do we know what to set it to? Well, we got to do a test cut. All right, so I'm going to move this belt out of the way. I'm going to put because we might need to make several test cuts. I'm going to put the V-groove switch on. So I'm going to push the switch over to the right side. I'm going to have the blade on the 4-ply step. And so it's going to be cutting like it was cutting a V-groove. Lock the head in place. Okay, now I'm going to go in. I got to close this window because we're not ready to adjust the setting yet. And I'm going to make a really wide mat. So on this machine, I've got a 40-inch mat in it. So I'll type 40 for the width and 16 for the height. I'm going to make it a single mat because we're just calibrating. I've got an opening, which you click add opening to put the opening on there. I'm going to click size opening from edge. I'm going to set all margins the same, and it's going to highlight this margin box, and so I'm going to type 4, and it just set all the margins the same. And it says, okay, that opening is 32 inches, 32 by 8. I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to cut this. Send to the cut with the send to cut button. And down here in the cut software, I've got this opening. So we're going to cut that. Here we go. Oops, I forgot to turn the clamps on. Retry. Looks like I don't have my V-groove set up very well. Anyways, so if I shadow this, you can see a line show up right there. Okay, and if I go over here and I shade this one, I can see this edge. So now I need to take a tape measure and I need to measure from this line to see if it actually is 32 inches. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my tape measure up here. I've got the 1 inch right there on that line. And if I measure down here to the other line, it looks like I'm a little over 32 inches. Remember, we're on the 1, so that's 33. So I'm looking at about 33 and a 32nd. So we need to correct that. So we'll go in here to the cut software setup, machine settings, password. We'll go to the axis tab, go to the XY pitch, and since it's ranges between 35 and 35.06, let's just put 35.06 in there and see what happens. Settings have been saved. Okay, now I'm going to make a new opening up here in the Create software. So I'm going to change the borders, set all margins the same. I'm going to make them less, so I'm going to make them 3.5 inches all the way around. So now I have a 33-inch opening. Alright, send that to cut. Now I've got my new thing, my new opening to cut. And now I'm going to cut that, but I got to get my tape measure out of the way. Okay, so press cut. Okay, so now made that opening bigger. So here's my previous cut right here, and here's my new cut right there. Okay, same thing on this end. I got a bigger cut here. Okay, so now I've got to measure that. Okay, so there I've got my 1 inch on the new bigger cut out there. And if I go down here and I look, I've got right on the 34 there, right? So that would be 33 inches. And if I go back over to my Create screen, 33 inches is what I'm supposed to have. So that's how you use the XY pitch. Now if I was off, like I guessed 35.06, maybe that wasn't the right one. Well, I would change to another number like 35.04 and repeat the test, each time making the opening bigger and then cutting it and then measuring it until I got the right XY pitch. So that's in here in machine settings on the axis tab, the XY pitch. Okay, that's how you do it. Thank you. One thing to remember after setting your XY pitch is you need to take the V-groove switch off so you can cut and you won't forget. Very important step, often forgotten.